Apple or Tesla? What makes a company more compelling as an investment? Well, stick around to find out. So here's my idea. In order to even have a shot at being a great company, a company has to have the following things. It needs to have a well-defined and understood higher purpose. Most companies don't have this. A vision, what's the general direction that executive management wants the company to go? And then a mission statement, a more specific direction. Without this, a company's rudderless. How can the middle managers and the employees know what to do day to day if they don't have a shining North Star, something to guide them forward? Most of us have also heard Warren Buffett say that a company needs to have barriers to entry, or he calls them moats. This is important because it keeps competitors from taking market share away from you. For any company, you have to have access to and the ability to attract great employees. Now, this final one really isn't a requirement for a great company, but if you want a high growth company, you want a company that is delving into S-curve markets. Now, those don't always happen. You can't just start a company at any given time and go after an S-curve market. You have to be in the right place at the right time. But boy, I'll tell you, when you find these, they can really drive a company into very high growth. So I decided to take a look at a handful of companies here and did a Google search looking for a higher purpose statement. And I came up with absolutely nothing for any of them except for Tesla. And really, in Tesla's case, it's Elon's higher purpose, which is to save humanity. So clearly, you can have a successful company without having a formalized higher purpose. But I think having a higher purpose really gives you the motivation to drive forward and then achieve the vision and the mission statements. So since I didn't find any higher purpose statements, why don't we see if we can come up with some for these companies? Now, if you have some other ideas, please put them in the comments below. But this is what I came up with. I just created some that seemed to make sense to me based on what I know about the companies. For example, Disney, instill good values and kindness in society. That's a higher purpose. Netflix, I don't know what I would do with them. And then for Twitter, it kind of makes sense. They're a platform where people can share ideas, and I think their higher purpose should be to protect free speech and the sharing of ideas. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Now, let's talk about vision statements. If you Google vision statement for Tesla, vision statement for Apple, and so on, you will get results. In fact, you can see all of the vision statements that I found here are in quotes. Now, I had to paraphrase these to get them to fit on this slide. So they're not exactly as they were written, but you'll get the idea. And the only one I didn't find a vision statement for was Google. Enable equal access to information and education or educational materials. So these are some of the visions that I found. Now, what's interesting is Twitter's vision is to be the world's most diverse and inclusive company. Now, I totally agree with the idea of having an equal and level playing field for everyone, regardless of their gender, their race, or whatever characteristic might differentiate them. I think that's a great thing to do. All companies should do that. But to have it as a vision, it's misplaced. The vision of the company should be what the company's view is going forward, not what the HR policy and how we treat diversity should be. That's an internal view of the company. So what did I come up with for Twitter instead of the world's most diverse and inclusive company? How about enable diverse opinions and ideas to be shared, heard, and debated? Now, I did the same exact thing for the mission. What was Tesla's mission, Apple's, so on, Netflix? And here are the results I came up with. Tesla accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. I really liked Disney's entertain, inform, and inspire through storytelling. That's a great mission statement. It really tells what they want to do and who they want to be. And for Twitter, they listed empower the creating and sharing of ideas and information. That's great. That does fit what they're about. So how does all this translate to stock performance? Well, what I've done here is I've plotted all of these stocks that I just listed from their IPO date. So you'll see at the bottom it goes from 0 years up to 62 years. And in fact, you can see that Disney's been around a long time, this green line. Disney's been around for over 60 years. And then, a company like Twitter's only been around for about 9 years. and so on. So you can see all of the growths of these companies. And oh, by the way, what is this equation here? So this gray line is the S&P 500. I put it here just for reference. But this dotted gray line is the exponential trend line for the S&P 500, given this data since the ETF SPY was launched in 1993. So the equation is y equals e to the 0.0903x. What does this number mean? Well, this number, 0.0903, is the annual rate of return for this compound growth rate. So the ETF SPY for the S&P 500 has had a compound annual growth rate of 9.03% since it came public in 1993. And you can see that's represented by this trend line. Now, in the case of Apple, you can barely see this white line because it falls right under Disney's green line here. This white line has a compound annual rate of return of 13.86%. But if you'll notice, Apple is way up here. It's not on that line. So if you look at where Apple is here, that results in about a 20% compound annual growth rate, not a 13 or 14% compound annual growth rate. So for purposes of this video, we're going to focus on 4 stocks and compare them and refer back to the thesis that I presented at the beginning of this video. So we're going to compare Tesla and Apple, and we're going to compare Netflix and Disney. Now, why Netflix and Disney? Well, they're in pretty much exactly the same market. They're going about it different ways. And look, Netflix certainly has a rocket ship trajectory here. Is it the better stock to invest in, or is Disney? Well, let's dig into it and see. And oh, by the way, Twitter seems to be rudderless. Their trend line has a negative compound annual growth rate of 3.9%. So their return has been negative ever since they IPO'd. Not a good place to be. So again, let's look at Netflix and let's look at Disney. Now, off the cuff, I would say, oh boy, look at Netflix. It's just on a tear here. Maybe I'll throw my money in there and hope it keeps going. Well, you could do that, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. In fact, one of the things you'll notice here is that way back in the day when Disney started, 60 some odd years ago, its trajectory matched that of Netflix. Interesting. So let's go back to the thesis. Let's compare the purpose, vision, and mission for Disney and for Netflix and see how they compare. See if we can glean anything from them. So for Disney, the higher purpose, and this is one I gave it because they didn't have one, is to instill good values and kindness in society. That's a very nice higher goal. And then what's the vision to achieve that? To be the world's leading producers of entertainment. So they use their entertainment platform, especially targeted at kids, to instill good values. And then their mission, entertain, inform, and inspire through storytelling. That's a great mission statement. Now, Netflix, I couldn't come up with a higher purpose for Netflix except to make money. I really don't know. If you have any ideas, please put them in the comments below. Their vision statement is to become the best global entertainment distributor. Now, there's a red flag right away. Netflix is now a content creator, not just a distributor. They were a distributor when they first started out. In the old days when they used to send DVDs to your mailbox, and then they eventually went online and started streaming. That was very innovative and great at the time. But they haven't changed their vision to match what they're currently doing. And then their mission statement, we want to entertain the world. That's pretty lofty. So overall, I think Disney has a better vision and a better mission statement than Netflix. So a better sense of direction. Now let's talk about the barriers to entry for Disney, and then we'll compare that to Netflix. Disney has extremely good brand loyalty, and it starts at a very young age. Now, my wife and I took our son, Daniel, when he was maybe 4 or 5 years old. We took him to Disney World down in Florida. And I never saw Daniel watch any Disney cartoons or movies or anything. But we're there at the park. He sees Mickey Mouse and he went crazy. He loved seeing Mickey Mouse. I was totally floored. I didn't even know that he knew who Mickey Mouse was. That's amazing. Disney is doing a great job of marketing to very young people who then take that brand loyalty forward with them. It's a great strategy. The other thing that Disney has is an in-person experience through their theme parks and then through their cruises. I know entire families 30, 40 people who will go on these cruises together and they have a great time. Disney has a multi-generation fan/customer base. That's amazing. That's a very hard thing to repeat. They develop and own their own content, so people can't just use it. They have to license it from Disney. That's a pretty good moat. And in terms of access to talent, Disney's ranked the #1 most desirable place to work by humanities majors in college. They're ranked #4 by business majors. They're ranked 10 and 14 by engineering graduates, depending on which source you look at. And they're ranked 17 most desirable place to work by computer science majors. So they're not having much trouble getting access to very good talent. What about Netflix's moats? Well, they had a first mover advantage with streaming delivery of video content. Usually that can translate into a very nice long-term business. They have started developing their own content in some cases. So again, people would have to license that, or companies would have to license that. You can't just go use it. And in terms of access to talent, not as good as Disney. They're ranked #4 by humanity majors, #6 by business majors, #6 by computer majors, but they're not even in the top 25 or top 30 for engineering majors. So little weaker position there on attracting talent. And you can see that in this table. The blue boxes are Disney, the red boxes are Netflix, and you'll notice there is no red box in the engineering major side. And Disney beats them out here and here. For computer science majors, Netflix is rated higher. Let's go back to the graph and see how this plays out when we consider, do I want to invest my money in Netflix or do I want to invest it in Disney? Netflix certainly has been on the higher trajectory rate. Disney's been on a lower trajectory rate. But based on everything I'm seeing here, I think Netflix is a much higher risk investment than Disney is. And we'll have to see how this plays out going forward. I'm not suggesting that you go out and buy Disney. I'm not suggesting that you go out and buy Netflix. But do your homework and think about it. What about Apple versus Tesla? Well, again, it's very similar to the Netflix versus Disney. Tesla has a much steeper slope here. It's been growing at a trend of almost 39% per year, while Apple has a much slower slope rate of about 14% a year and a very choppy ride in between. But let's go through the criteria that I laid out at the beginning of this video. But before we get to the criteria that I laid out at the beginning of this video, let's look at some events along Apple's history and see what happened. So very early on, not even 5 years after their IPO, Steve Jobs left Apple. And if you were around then, you know he went off and started Next Computer. And Scully came in and the stock price skyrocketed because everybody thought Scully was going to make Apple a great success. And you can see that, after a while, the stock kind of floundered, went nowhere to down. So finally, the board got tired of that. They brought Steve Jobs back to Apple. Stock continued to go down because the market didn't think Steve Jobs was so great. But turns out the board was right. The stock started to skyrocket here. I'm not sure what this pullback was. And then Steve Jobs introduced the iPod, an extremely innovative product on an S-curve. And you can see what happened to the stock after they introduced the iPod and then 5 years later introduced the iPhone. It's just on a rocket ship trajectory. Look at this. I've drawn a trend line in here. It's just phenomenal. Great growth. But what happened? Steve Jobs started looking not so good. He didn't show up at Macworld. And you can see that pivot point here where people started to recognize his health was at risk and the stock dropped a lot. Then it rebounded. And then right here, Steve Jobs passes away. Now, if you look at this and you look at the history of Apple, Apple has not had any major innovations since the iPhone. That's not a death knell, but you can see that the growth after Steve Jobs left the firm has really moderated here. It was on this trajectory, and it's really moderated going forward. Now, more recently, it's got a really nice trajectory here. Not sure what that's about or if it'll continue, but we'll see. But I don't see any innovations out of Apple recently. So what about the thesis? Let's look at Tesla versus Apple. Purpose, vision, and mission. Tesla, higher purpose, save humanity. It's out there in the public, well documented. What's their vision? to drive the transition to a sustainable future. Well, if you're going to save humanity, you need a sustainable future, right? Makes sense. And then their mission statement, accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. These are really clear, and every employee that works at Tesla knows what they need to do. Let's look at Apple. Apple didn't have a stated higher purpose, so I don't know what that is. Their vision is to make the best products and leave the world better. That's very nice. And they do make the best products, by the way. They make great products. Their mission statement, bring the best user experience through innovation. They have some great products. They certainly took the creator market by storm. If you walk into any creative studio, you're going to find Apple products in there. They're used by just about all the creators. Now let's move on to the barriers to entry. So what are Tesla's moats? Well, they have innovative thinking and implementation throughout the organization at a level that I have never seen before. I've been at some really great companies in terms of engineering, Bose Corporation in Framingham, for example. And the thinking and the implementations that go on at Tesla are beyond anything I've ever experienced. They have superior engineering, design, and manufacturing. They can get the best and brightest engineering talent. Tesla and SpaceX are ranked number 1 and number 2 by graduating engineering students. That's amazing. And by the way, I can tell you firsthand, the best customer experience, no doubt. My wife and I have a Tesla we own, and it is the best car I've ever driven. Tesla just takes care of you from a software perspective and from an experience perspective. I am a raving Tesla fan when it comes to their cars. And I've driven the Model 3 and the Model Y. I also have Tesla solar and Tesla Powerwalls on my house. And again, I can tell you the entire experience from ordering it to having it installed was far better than anything I've ever experienced. Tesla called me, they texted me, they emailed me. Tesla employees came to the house, installed the system, and living with the system is just a dream. It's really easy to work with, and I feel really comfortable when storms come through because my lights don't even flicker when the power goes off. Not only that, but the Tesla solar and Powerwall work with the Model 3, so they know when the Model 3 is plugged into charge, and they can coordinate so they don't run down your Powerwall battery. And if you couldn't tell, Tesla has brand loyalty, and it's cult-like. Tesla has established a multi-year lead in data, manufacturing, and superior supply chain. That's a huge barrier to entry, especially in the manufacture of electric vehicles. They've established superior supercharger network. I can tell you this firsthand in a charging experience. My wife and I recently rented a Model Y from Hertz. We drove out to Chicago, and it was a fabulous experience. We had never taken a long trip in the Model 3 before. So we rented this Model Y. We, put in our destination in the navigation system, and it says, okay, you're going to stop here, and you're going to have this much battery left when you get there. So we went with it. We got to the supercharger. It prepped the battery before we got there for high-speed charging. And once we plugged in, it told us how long it would take until we could have enough charge to go to our next location. After we plugged in, it told us how much time it would take to charge so we would have enough charge to get to our next charge destination. And, I would always wait a little bit longer because I wanted to have a little extra charge for safety, but it worked out great. And then we'd leave and we'd go to the next charger. Not a problem at all. Very, very stress-free and seamless. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is Tesla is years ahead in artificial general intelligence. They are solving self-driving in a way that requires them to solve artificial general intelligence. It's amazing what they're doing. And if you saw their AI day a couple of days ago, what they're doing is phenomenal. And they are way ahead of everybody. Another side benefit that a lot of people don't think about, there's cross-pollination between Tesla, SpaceX, and possibly the Boring Company. There are examples of where SpaceX has developed special materials for use in the Tesla cars. So how does all this compare to Apple's barriers to entry? Well, Apple has some pretty good ones. They have significant brand loyalty. It's cult-like. We all know Apple customers are definitely a cult. One of the things they do is they make their customers feel cooler than non-customers via texting. I don't have an Apple device. I have a Google Pixel 6. I love, by the way. But when I text family members who have Apple devices, they all rib me because my bubbles come up in a different color because I'm not on the Apple ecosystem. Apple definitely has superior engineering and design. Their products are very high functioning and very high quality. As I said earlier, they've established themselves as the technology for creators. And I'm not so sure about this last one, but they've created a walled garden. So if you're in the Apple ecosystem, it's a very nice garden. But if you want to go outside that system, the walls are very high. It's a closed system. They don't want you going outside and using non-Apple products. And I think this can be a negative. What about the ability to track talent for Apple and Tesla? So again, I've made this visual chart here where the blue boxes are Apple, the red boxes are Tesla. And you can see they're pretty much neck and neck here. Apple's number one with business majors, but Tesla's not far behind. Engineering majors, clearly SpaceX, Tesla number one and number two, but Apple's not far behind at number 6. Computer science majors, Apple's number 2, Tesla's number 5. And humanity majors, Apple is number 11, Tesla's number 24. So no trouble attracting really high quality talent. What about S-curves, innovation? Well, I kind of alluded to this earlier. I really have not seen Apple innovate since the iPhone was introduced. But let's take a look. So Tesla, electric vehicles, definitely on an S-curve, high ramp right now in the marketplace. Electric energy production. Now, the electric energy market is not in an S-curve. It's been around for a long time. It's everywhere. But the fact that Tesla can come and disrupt a $4 to $5 trillion market and take major chunks of market share away from utilities and other energy companies puts Tesla in the position of an S-shaped adoption rate of their products. Robotaxi, Tesla has a very large lead here. The full self-driving suite is just phenomenal. It's not geo-fenced. It can operate in unknown areas and recognize safety versus danger. They are going to get there first, and this is a huge market. We'll talk about that later. And then on Friday, they showed the humanoid robot. I know it was first glance at it, it's very early days, but the fact that they made this much progress in such a short time since they announced it at the very first AI Day is phenomenal. They're going to show really good things here. And this market's huge as well. And then again, artificial general intelligence. To do the robotaxi and to do the humanoid robot, they have to solve artificial general intelligence. Now, what about Apple? Well, computers are no longer in an S-curve. That was decades ago. And cell phones are no longer in an S-curve. That was a long time ago as well. That doesn't mean Apple's a bad company. It just means they're going to grow at a slower rate than Tesla is. So what are the markets for Tesla? Well, I've kind of cobbled together some ideas here and basically put a number of $16 trillion. I think it's even bigger than that. But let's break it down here. So we have electric vehicles, currently 161 billion in 2021 last year, with a 17.5% compound annual growth rate. So that projects to about 434 billion in 2028. Electric energy production, as I mentioned earlier. Now, Tesla is already approved as an electric utility in Texas. And if they keep carrying that forward, this market is huge. $4.4 trillion in 2022 and growing at an 8.3 compound annual growth rate. Robotaxi. The robotaxi market has been estimated to be $9 to $12 trillion per year. That's an amazing market. And if Tesla has first mover here and can take a big share of this market, they are going to grow really, really fast. Now, the humanoid robot, who knows? That market is just boundless. So I put a number of $2.5 trillion in here. And artificial general intelligence, I wouldn't even hazard a guess, but it's just a phenomenally huge market. What about Apple? Well, Apple's market is roughly, call it 750 billion to maybe $1 trillion. It's not an S-curve market. These are more mature markets. Computers, currently 291 billion. 2022, growing at an anemic 1.75% compound annual growth rate. Cell phones, a bigger market, $457 billion in 2021, with a little bit better growth rate of 7.3%. So Apple is going to continue to be profitable. They charge premiums for their products. They've got a cult-like following. So it's a great company, but it's not going to give you the highest return. So going back to the graph, which one would I choose? Well, I look at Apple and, great company, really a nice growth path here, up 20% a year if you look at the end point. A great place to be. It's a good company. But what concerns me is I don't see innovation. I don't know where they're going to innovate. There's no roadmap. There hasn't been one since Steve Jobs left way back here, well over a decade ago. Tesla, on the other hand, has a very nice slope in their exponential growth. They have multiple S-curve markets that they can go after, and they're doing it. And that could lead to an even higher growth rate going forward. So if I were going to pick between these two, I would pick Tesla. But look, I'm not recommending you go out and buy Tesla. Do your own homework, go through the numbers, make your own decisions. But this is what I see here based on my thesis at the beginning of this video. So where does all this leave us? Well, it's obvious you can't just pick a stock based on its current trajectory. Do I invest in an Amazon? Great trajectory. Do I invest in a Tesla? Great trajectory. Back in the early days, do I invest in Microsoft? Phenomenal trajectory until it wasn't anymore. It kind of went sideways, and then you know how that went. So you really need to look at not just the great trajectory, but what the company's strengths and weaknesses are, which gets us back to where we started. Great companies need to have well-defined and understood purpose, vision, and mission statement. They need to have barriers to entry. At a minimum, they need to have access and the ability to hire great talent. S-curves are optional, but they can really drive a company into super high growth. I'm Calvin Rose, and thank you for watching Invest Smarter today. If you like this video, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you won't miss an upcoming episode of Invest Smarter. That's all for now. Hey, thank you for watching. If you enjoy these videos, there's several ways on Patreon for you to support the channel and access exclusive content, including special posts on the markets, educational materials about how to select investments and manage your portfolio. And at the investor level, you'll have full access to our natural selection stock rankings so you can evaluate individual stocks or market sectors that fit your investment style. Check out the link at the pinned comments below, and thank you for your support.